Okay, I think we are live. So give me just a moment to share this group. Welcome. If you're already tuned in and watching, drop us a comment. Let us know where you are watching from. Oops. Okay, I think we're officially streaming everywhere we need to be. So welcome everyone to November's TBI Talks. This week we are here with Dr. Shane Steadman from Integrated Brain Centers, and we're going to be talking all about fatigue after TBI. I know that's one of the most common complaints I hear from people, and I know it's also one of the most like lingering symptoms for people who even after they started getting better, they still deal with some of that fatigue. So excited to dive into this today. Where would you like to start, Dr. Steadman?
Well, I think just the simple fact that TBIs cause fatigue. It's like I trying to even think if I have a patient that's ever had a brain injury that didn't have fatigue.
Right.
I think it comes with the territory, and there's a couple of things that you look at. One is that your brain is just trying to repair. Like we actually have a newer patient that
Mm-hmm.
she was getting out of a boat and her foot got caught in the cords, fell out of the boat, slammed her body on the ground, hit her head.
Ouch.
And so she was like, I'm just so tired. I'm like sleeping all the time. And I told her, I was like, well, I mean, there's good parts to that because your body's trying to heal, and we all know that your brain heals better when it's sleeping, because that's when we make all our
Mm-hmm.
memories and our brain heals and all those cool things happen. That's why sleep is so incredibly important. But then you have patients that go, yeah, but I'm sleeping like 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And you're like, okay, now that's too much. But we do know that fatigue sets in with brain injuries, and it can be a really good thing. And I think one of the directions that we can go is, and I'll definitely I'll lead this obviously, but brain injuries can cause changes in blood sugar. So that's actually a very common thing that's very, very research based. Is pretty well known now that when you have a brain injury, you actually can go hypoglycemic or you can have lower blood sugar. And so that actually can cause a fatigue from a blood sugar standpoint, but your brain is really using up a lot of sugar because it's like, I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to
Right.
fix it. So all the energy and the effort is going towards that. And so you get really fatigued. So you do see like this blood sugar component on most all TBIs. Again, it's in all the research. It's a really common thing. And so I think that's good for people to know that, okay, you're not crazy. This is not weird. You're not abnormal. This is just part of like physiology that takes place. This is part of the healing process that we have to identify and address, because if you are going hypoglycemic, we talk about this. I know I tend to be a little bit more the face of the metabolic side of TBIs, but the reason why I focus on that metabolic piece is because I think a lot of people don't really sit down and comprehend the fact that we need to have a good diet when we have a brain injury. We have to make sure that we're not carb loading on our brain diet. We're not eating pizza. We're not doing ice cream. We're not doing chocolate, that we're actually getting protein. Because if our body uses protein to heal, then we need to get some protein in, right? We know that. I mean, if you go to the gym, you see a lot of people that are trying to work out and get bigger and get stronger, and muscle recovery even is from like protein. I mean, they talk about like if you're not recovering well from your workouts, and you need to increase your protein.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a brain injury, then yeah, protein could be a really big factor. So protein, well, that we've talked about on other TBI talks and your podcasts and stuff like that, is that protein helps to stabilize your blood sugar and keep it level. So you don't want to have these roller coasters. And if you have a brain injury and you're already starting to dive into that like low blood sugar tendency, then let's get a good healthy diet to pull you back up and to stabilize so that your brain has fuel it has protein, it has amino acids, it has building blocks, it has fat, it has all these things that are needed to get better. And so that's why, like in our office, we're always focusing on like there's got to be a dietary piece. And so I would say first is like blood sugar, and I would say second we'll talk about adrenals, but I'll hear what your thoughts are on that. I mean, you've seen that too. It's not crazy, but people don't think.
Right. And, when you first kind of start talking, you mentioned how right after a brain injury, your brain's trying to heal. And I know I had surgery, what has it been, 2 years now? Excuse me. And I couldn't get over how tired I was for like 2 to 3 weeks after surgery. And I had to keep reminding myself, your body just like had this major invasion in it, right? And now you've probably got some inflammation from surgery. And I think most of us understand in the acute phase of brain injury why we're tired, because our body's trying to heal and it heals while we're sleeping. But like you said, it's when that continues to linger and it's going on months or years and you're still sleeping. Well, it's sort of a catch 22 with a lot of TBI people, right? Like they're sleeping 14, 15 hours, but it's not necessarily good sleep.
I agree.
Or, they go to bed and then they wake up for a few hours, or they can't fall asleep. Like we've talked about this in other talks, the whole sleep cycle thing. Um, and then that in itself is fatiguing too, right? And I think that's where traditional doctors give up on us so quickly because they don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
And like with you guys, you're going to sit down and you're going to do blood work, right? You're going to assess what's going on in the person's body, and you're going to spend time with them to dig and figure out, is this blood sugar related? Is this adrenal related? Like, where is this coming from?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I think when we start talking long term, that's sometimes where we actually get into the adrenal talk, because you see this, you can see it post infection, you can see it post stress, people go through divorces, people have brain injuries, people have car accidents. Your whole adrenaline system can just take a hit.
Yeah.
And that just causes that long-term fatigue that sets in. And a lot of people don't think about an adrenal support or supporting the adrenals or doing adrenal supplements, will say, because obviously you think of brain, it's like it's brain, you go to the neurologist, you go to this brain doctor, that
Right.
brain, right? And everybody's going to the brain doctors, but a lot of the brain doctors don't think about, okay, adrenals, maybe your brain is actually doing better, but you're so fatigued that you're not getting good sleep, or you're not able to do all these things that you just talked about. So I think that's a lot of times you kind of see like the blood sugar adrenal component, they kind of present together. So when you tend to see like low glucose or low blood sugar, you tend to see the low adrenal side. So like, yes, you can eat better and you can get more protein, but sometimes you have to come back around and say, okay, can we use some supplements? Can we get the adrenaline system back up and running? Because the adrenals also help to control and regulate that sugar even when you're sleeping. And we've talked about that on previous talks too, that if you don't have good adrenal function, your sleep is going to kind of be garbage. So how do we get all of that fixed? And so that's sometimes those long-term TBI fatigues that people don't know that you need to deal with, and they're just kind of looking for all these quick fixes. And we got to address some of the physiology.
I think maybe we should take a moment too to even explain the adrenals, because I don't think it's something we've talked about a lot. It tends to be a buzzword like in the health and wellness industry, like adrenal fatigue. Um, but I think the average person might not even know what the adrenals are, what they do. So maybe just like a really quick overview of what are the adrenals.
Absolutely. So adrenals are glands that are on top of the kidney. So your kidneys are actually called renal glands. And then you have this gland on top of your kidneys called adrenals or adrenals. The AD means above. It's really simple. So it's a gland on top of your kidney. And what it does is it controls a couple things. One, cortisol. So when you have a lot of stress, like a brain injury, your adrenaline shoots up. And so your adrenals have to like engage into that. And so you get this cortisol bump. It also is involved in what's called the glucocorticoid system. So it helps to kind of regulate and stabilize blood sugar because you need that. When you get a brain injury, your body flooded some glucose because it's saying we're in danger and we need fuel to run away or to survive. So then you have this glucocorticoid system that's in there. And then you have another one called a mineral corticoid. And that's your helps to kind of regulate blood potassium and sodium. So this is what you tend to see, like with low adrenals, on the mineral side, you'll see that people tend to have like lower salt in their system.
Okay.
They tend to crave salt. So, and then I'll finish that thought and I'll come back around. But sorry, I was going to skip. People who have high adrenals will tend to hold on to their sodium. And what that can do is it can actually raise blood pressure over time. And what do the doctors do? They give you a diuretic to make you urinate out the salt, and then it brings your blood pressure back down. So your adrenals kind of have these like three kind of bigger systems: cortisol, glucose, and then kind of blood pressure, mineral side. So that's why, like, when you're super stressed, your blood pressure goes up. You could be super stressed and your blood sugar can go up, and then you're super stressed and your cortisol goes up. So when you have a brain injury, obviously you need all these things. It's like survive, keep this person alive, we got to fight to, live to fight another day sort of scenario. But if you're just like hammering that system day in and day out, you kind of used the term earlier, a lot of holistic people use the term adrenal fatigue. And that's just where you start to see the lower adrenal function. So now your blood pressure is low, your glucose is low, your cortisol is low, your energy is low. Everything just kind of goes, and it just decreases. And when you have low blood pressure, you can have fatigue, but how much blood and oxygen are you getting to your brain? Because to have a brain injury and low blood pressure isn't super helpful, because you got to get blood all the way to the brain. It's got to have enough pressure. It's kind of like, and I'm going off on tangents, I feel, but this is good. So I feel like it's like if you don't have a lot of pressure in your sprinkler system, it's usually the grass that's on the very edge that's turning brown, because it's just not getting enough water to hit that edge. Same thing, like when you get into brain function, your blood pressure drops significantly by the time it reaches your brain. So to get to the very, very, very small blood vessels all the way very end, are you getting all of that? If your fingers are cold, your nose is cold, how's your brain doing? So when we talk about adrenals, we don't want low blood pressure, low adrenals. And in the traditional medical world, they always go, good job, you got low blood pressure. And I'm like,
right.
Out. The patient is cold all the time. So how's their brain doing? So if you don't have good blood pressure, then are you getting enough oxygen? And that's important for brain recovery. If your adrenals are low on that glucose side, are you getting enough glucose? And you got to have fuel for brain recovery. And then we have cortisol, and cortisol is a double-edged sword. Cortisol is great for pain, but if you get too much, it causes pain. Cortisol is what allows you to lift a car off, the mom lifting her car off the kid kind of, stories that you hear. You have all this superhuman strength because cortisol comes in and says, we got you. But that's meant for a short-term delivery, not a long-term delivery, because over time it loosens ligaments and it breaks down joints and all these things. But if you don't have enough cortisol, then how are you supposed to fight off an infection? How are you supposed to get through the day? How are you supposed to have endurance? And so this is where you see the fatigue coming into play. It's like, I'm so tired because I don't have enough oxygen. I'm so tired because I don't have enough glucose. I'm so tired because I don't have enough cortisol. And that's a huge tangent to say adrenals are very important and they take a massive hit when it comes to TBIs.
And what are some, you had mentioned adrenal support supplements. What are some of those that you recommend?
Some of the I like the most, I do like licorice root is a really good one. That can help increase cortisol function. It's called glycyrrhiza. You can find those. So there's different companies that have those. I tend to use a little bit more of Apex products. And there's an Apex product that's actually called Adrenal Stem. And it has, it's a cream, which people really like because you can put the cream on. You don't have to take pills all day. So I'll have them do like a cream in the morning and a cream at lunch and just trying to, rub it into their wrist or elbows and try to get the adrenals up. because you want them to be higher in the morning time and then lower in
Mhm.
the evening time. So we'll kind of like drive that in the morning so they have better endurance throughout the day. The ones that's really good for like high cortisol is phosphatidylserine. So a lot
So
of
that
people
would be for someone who has an overactive
have maybe a
adrenal.
little too much, and that can help kind of regulate it. So I'll use actually Apex has like it's like a cream that's like a phosphatidylserine cream, so you can kind of get a higher dosage, which is really nice. So I use those two, one for low, one for high, and then probably one that's really kind of our end all to be all is they're called adaptogens. So
Mm.
adaptogens, they help to normalize adrenal function. So people have heard things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil leaf, Panax ginseng. Those are all like your adaptogens, and they help to normalize adrenals. So, a lot of times I give those to patients who are like kind of like a fresh TBI. That makes sense. It's like, it's
Yeah.
like we got to get like everything's just doing this. Your body's like, I don't know where I'm at. And I'm like, okay, here's some adaptogens. I got to like normalize this system. And so
Mhm.
those are kind of like the three kind of categories of adrenal supplements that people can use.
Yeah, and adaptogens, they're kind of getting their time in the limelight right now with a lot of the mushroom coffees and because your mushrooms are your big adaptogens. So I know they're out there, they're easily accessible now.
Yeah. I mean, I've even seen like in the fitness world, people are like, ashwagandha is the best ever. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, that's why you're able to like have better endurance at the gym
Yeah.
because you a little bit more stability in your adrenals. So you're not like, doing some weights and then you're like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't do anymore. So you're now seeing like adaptogens in the fitness world so that you can get to your 3 sets of 12 and do a 45 to an hour a minute, like exercise program. So you're starting to see like adaptogens definitely finally kind of getting their place in this world of recognition. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I think when it comes to TBI, that's the biggest thing that you try to focus on in the beginning is saying, okay, or even long term, but it's like, okay, we got to make sure that that whole adrenal blood sugar system is kind of
Hmm.
up running and stability. So let's make sure we're eating right and let's use some adaptogens. It could be that simple. I think moving beyond that, what you tend to see is that I think we all say it, but people kind of forget your brain controls the rest of your body. And
Right.
so if your brain is offline, is your thyroid offline? And we a lot of people know that low thyroid symptoms are fatigue. And there's lots of research that correlates TBIs and hypothyroidism. I mean, there's a ton of research out there.
Yep.
There's research looking at things like dopamine and serotonin and its influence on thyroid function. And so when people have brain injuries, they throw off their neurotransmitters. And so when you throw off serotonin and dopamine, it can really impact thyroid function. So now the question is like, do you have fatigue that's from that? Well, that's where blood
Right.
work comes in. And blood work is really amazing to look at things like glucose and thyroid. And then I'll get into hormones next, because I think if you're looking at changing your endocrine system because of a TBI, it's also going to change things like pituitary,
Hmm.
function that leads to estrogen and progesterone and testosterone imbalances. And guys can have low testosterone and have fatigue. Women can have low progesterone and have fatigue. So you're trying to figure out where that fatigue is coming from. And yes, it's probably the brain injury, and maybe the brain's doing better, but you gotta find somebody that knows how to fix the metabolic and the physiology afterwards.
Hmm. Right. And I think a big key is doing the proper blood work, right? Like I know for you guys, that's one of the first things you typically do with a patient. Um, our blood can tell you so much about what's going on in our body, right? It can tell you the glucose. It can it tell you cortisol? I know the P
Yeah,
test can do
so
cortisol.
you can do that
Yeah.
too. I like saliva better, but you can definitely
Ah.
run blood cortisol levels. Yeah, you can even look at pituitary to cortisol and see if that communication is actually working. Yeah, you're right. Blood work tells you everything. I kind of correlated to like running diagnostics on your car.
Hmm.
You're like, there's something wrong with my car. You take it to the mechanic, they run diagnostics
Yep.
and tell you what's wrong. And it's really not that much different with blood work. We can kind of do the exam, do the blood work, run diagnostics on your brain and your body, and then say, here's what's wrong with you.
Yeah. I'm just checking in over on Facebook right now, just seeing if anyone has any questions about what we're talking about. Go ahead, drop a comment, or even just drop a comment. Let us know where you're listening from. I can see there's a bunch of you watching right now, so we'd love to hear from you. Um, so the whole fatigue thing, and it's a complex spider web, right? And trying to would you say it's sort of like a process of elimination, like checking one thing and then checking the other thing and seeing um which things are functioning and which are not?
Yes and no. I mean, I know where you're going. So yes, it is, but also don't want to make it like a trial and error piece,
Right.
but I like the spider web analogy because I think all of these things are very intricate,
Mhm.
complex webs, and so you have to sometimes whenever you have a web of dysfunction, you have to address all the pieces in the web because they're so interrelated. And so I like that analogy a lot. Um, I think I think this is where the blood work comes in because I think the blood work in the exam takes out a lot of the trial and error, which is really nice. So
Yeah.
what we all try to do as doctors is you say, okay, there's 50 possibilities to your fatigue, so then I can do a proper workout and we can work up and then we can knock that down to 5, right? So if we're down to 5 things, well, that's kind of easy because you can say, okay, let's get your diet under control, stabilize your blood sugar, work on your adrenals, work on your thyroid. So that's easy to work on 4 things at once. But and yes, that part becomes a trial and error because if it works, then I look like a hero. And if it doesn't, then I have to go back to the drawing board, but that's your goal is you always say, okay, here's all the different possibilities, and we should narrow it down to probably at least 5 or less. The other kind of analogy that I've used is kind of like if you ever been fishing, which I'm sure in Minnesota you have, but it's like you throw the line out there, you reel it back in, and somehow it knotted up, and you can sit there for 20 minutes, and you're like, where did this start? And you're trying to find like where that knot started, and then you're trying to feed through. And I think that's sometimes how these things are. It's like
Yeah.
it's just a knot, messy stuff. And it's like, where do I even start with this? And so you have to kind of go through and go, okay, I think I found it, and then you're slowly pulling it through, and then you get the big loop, and then you can, and that's kind of like how patients' health is.
Yeah.
It's just a naughty mess.
Yeah, literally. Well, so Shane, let's talk a little bit about how people can work with you guys if they're curious, if they have some questions. You guys do offer a free consultation with you or Perry, and they can find that at integratedbraincenters.com. They can get that scheduled. But tell us a little bit about what it's like working with you guys.
We spend a lot of time on the front end just trying to figure things out. So that's why we do consultations, because I think
Mm.
consultations are good you want to make sure it's a good fit. I mean, and we don't have to always be a good fit, and that's fine. There's other people out there, but I always want to make sure it's a good fit because if you're going to pour your time into it, then I want to make sure that I'm not just working my butt off for nothing either, because that doesn't sound
Yeah.
fun. So I was doing a consultation with the patient this morning, and she's got a lot of stuff, and oh my gosh, she sent me so many labs. I mean, I told her, I was like, easily I'm probably going to spend just an hour alone going through your labs, plus I'm going to do a 3-hour exam, plus we're going to do an hour and a half reported findings. So I mean, I'm probably going to spend 5 to 6 hours just within 2 visits. And so I
Yeah.
think
Just onboarding.
yeah, I think when people say what to expect is kind of that, because I kind of do spend a lot of time on that front end. But
Uh-huh.
if we can figure that out on the front end, then it takes out the guessing, because nobody likes guessing. I don't like guessing. You don't like guessing. Patients hate the guessing. So if we can rule out as many guesses as possible, get down to like, okay, here are the things that we need to do, then that makes it much easier to like put together a plan. And I was talking at a networking group a couple of weeks ago, and I actually used a car analogy, because I get frustrated with the medical
Yeah.
system, because if well, Dr. Maynard actually has his car in the mechanic right now. So the mechanic, it was funny because I was telling him, I was like, hey, I just did a talk on this. And he goes,
Right.
couldn't get it. So like all week long, he's been frustrated going like, is this what patients feel like? I'm like, they do. So like, right, he had, his car's not working. He takes to the mechanic. The mechanics probably spent a half hour to an hour going through the car, running diagnostics, right? And then they call up Dr. Maynard and they say, okay, here's what's wrong with your car. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. Here's the plan. This is how much it's going to cost. Why don't we do that in medicine? Like why, and I'm going to get off on a tangent, but this was my talk at a networking group. I was like, we will literally spend more time checking out our car,
Yeah.
researching our car, finding the best mechanic for our car, coming up with a plan to fix our car. Most of us will put more money into our car than our own health. And that's a
And monthly maintenance.
and monthly maintenance, and that depreciates. And you're not going to have that for,
And it's a car. It's
it's a
not your
car.
body.
You know? So, but then when it comes to like health, it's just like
Yep.
such a different world. So,
Yep.
so I did this presentation and I pulled a mechanic that I know. I pulled some lingo from her website and I put it into my presentation. And the lingo is like, we will spend the time to find out what's going on with your vehicle, come up with a plan. We'll tell you that plan. We'll make sure you're taken care of, you know, and it's just like everything we talk about in health. And I go, why don't you guys do that with your own health? You know,
Yep.
oh, it's like, because
Yep.
I don't understand in medicine, we will spend as a traditional medical community, it's 15 minutes with the patient to
Yeah.
listen, diagnose, come up with a plan, and give you the next steps. And you could do that in 15 minutes. My mechanic can't even do that in 15 minutes. And the body's way more complex. So that's what we do this different is we actually take the time, spend the time, try to figure this out.
Yeah. I just had my annual follow-up with my cardiologist. And I mean, I know they look at your chart before they come back in and see you, but like you could tell he didn't remember anything we talked about last year because it's been a year and he's probably seen 3,000 patients in between.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a 20-minute visit and okay, keep doing what you're doing. See you next year.
Yeah.
Even though I expressed some concerns, he didn't seem very concerned. It's just like I don't understand our healthcare system sometimes.
I don't. I was doing a consult this morning and the patient said their doctor was like, come back when it's worse. And so I was like,
Yeah, let's just wait till it's worse.
like,
Yeah.
so, so why do we spend more time on our cars, on our furnace,
Yep.
heaters,
That's such a good analogy.
on our lawn, on our fence?
Right. Right. Our lawns, the well manicured lawn.
Oh, so crazy. So anyways, so I think if people are looking for that, then yeah, definitely. So we always do a 30-minute consultation. Let's just see if we can help. And
Yep.
if great. And if there's somebody, there's been many times that if there's somebody that is close to you that I find to be an amazing doctor, then go work with them because I just want
Yeah.
people to get better. I don't care
Yeah.
when, where, and how, but I want you to live the best life that you can possibly live.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Dr. Perry Maynard, and we'll be talking about chronic pain. And so we'll see you in 2 weeks, and then we'll see you again, Dr. Steadman, in next month.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.